Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Your support is greatly appreciated. Quick question. Where are you tuning in from today? Which city? Which country? Drop it below. Now, let's jump into today's story. At Fort Evers, Daniel Grant watched his elite trainees tackle the final exercise of the day. At 46, his lined face told the story of decades in the field, but his sharp gaze missed nothing as the team maneuvered through the rugged course. "Looking solid out there, sir," commented Sergeant Johnson, clipboard in hand. "This might be your strongest class yet." Daniel nodded, pride swelling in his chest. After 24 years of service, mentoring the best had become more than a mission. It was his legacy. "They're progressing, Johnson, but tomorrow's night ops will be the real test." His phone vibrated in his pocket, and he glanced at it with a smile. It was a photo from Lisa, showing her and Charlotte at their favorite cafe in Denver. His wife's auburn hair glowed in the afternoon sun, and his stepdaughter's legal textbooks sprawled across the table between their coffee cups. The image warmed his heart. At 46, he had the life he had always dreamed of. "Family check-in, sir?" Johnson teased. "Just the usual," Daniel replied, quickly typing. "Looking amazing, ladies. Save me one of those chocolate croissants you love, Lisa." The next morning, Daniel found himself in the base's advanced cybersecurity lab, where Simon Whitaker, a former cybersecurity expert with an unflinching teaching style, led a session on digital vulnerabilities. The overhead lights buzzed faintly as Simon paced in front of the officers. "Your personal devices are your greatest risk," Simon declared. "One sync, one backup, one careless move. That's all it takes for someone to access everything." Daniel sat at the back, his laptop open. At 46, he often felt like a relic among tech-savvy younger officers, but he was determined to stay ahead. "Let me show you an example," Simon continued, his fingers darting over his keyboard. "Connect your phones to your laptops as shown. This demonstrates how easily your data can be exposed." Suddenly, Simon froze, staring at the display. On the projected screen, a series of text messages from Daniel's phone appeared. "Lisa, just got back from Dr. K. Everything's fine with the baby. Uncle Robert is ecstatic. Charlotte, Mom, wrong chat? Delete it quickly. Lisa, oh no, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Daniels, in training all day, right? Charlotte, yes, but be cautious. We need to stick to the other app for this." The room grew silent. Daniel stared at the screen, his mind reeling. The officers around him shifted uneasily. Simon coughed and said, "Let's take a 5-minute break." His voice seemed far away, like it was underwater. Daniel's hands shook slightly as he took a screenshot before the messages vanished. His training instincts took over: gather intel, analyze, strategize. But this wasn't a mission. It was his life unraveling in front of his team. Lieutenant Rivera, who had served under Daniel in Iraq, approached cautiously. "Sir, do you need—" "I'm fine, Lieutenant." Daniel cut her off, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Just a mix-up. It's nothing." But as he spoke, his mind sifted through years of small inconsistencies. Lisa's late-night calls supposedly from her sister, the sudden trips to Chicago for errands, Charlotte's increasingly nervous demeanor. When the room cleared, Simon lingered. "Daniel," he said quietly, "I've seen this pattern before. This isn't the first message of its kind." Daniel met Simon's eyes, recognizing the professionalism of someone who understood breaches. "Can you help?" he asked softly. Simon nodded and scribbled. "A number. Call Jacob Quinn, former counterintelligence. He's discreet and knows how to handle these situations." Simon handed him a small device. "Use this burner phone for sensitive communications. Your regular phone is probably compromised." Daniel pocketed the phone and the number, his mind already forming a plan. He thought of Robert Carson, Uncle Robert, as Lisa called him, the family friend who had always been around, whose law firm handled confidential cases, and who was deeply tied to their community. "One more thing," Simon added. "Don't engage until you've gathered all the evidence. Timing is critical." The rest of the session passed in a haze as Daniel's years of tactical experience helped him compartmentalize the emotional storm building within. Daniel even managed to ask insightful questions about digital security, mentally noting techniques that might help uncover the truth. That evening, as he drove home, he detoured to a small park where he and Lisa had once spent peaceful Sunday afternoons. Taking out the burner phone, he dialed Jacob Quinn's number. "Quinn Investigations," a gruff voice answered. "Mr. Quinn, my name is Daniel Grant. Simon Whitaker suggested I contact you." There was a brief pause. "Simon mentioned you might call." "Military issue." "Personal," Daniel replied, "but with military complications." "Those are often the messiest kind," Quinn responded. "Tomorrow, 0700 Pinecrest Diner on Franklin Road. Come alone. Pay cash. No phones." Daniel agreed, ending the call, and stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The man staring back wasn't just a betrayed husband. He was a seasoned operations trainer who had spent decades uncovering hidden threats. Now, he would use every skill, resource, and connection to expose the truth, no matter the cost. As he drove home, he braced himself to face Lisa and Charlotte, pretending he hadn't seen the messages that had shattered his world. He was about to undertake the most challenging covert operation of his life, investigating his own family. The Pinecrest Diner stood against the morning light like a yellow-lit bunker. Daniel arrived 10 minutes early, selecting a booth with clear sight lines to all exits. Old habits died hard. He ordered black coffee and waited. Jacob Quinn wasn't what he expected. Wearing a neatly pressed shirt and wire-rimmed glasses, the investigator looked more like an accountant than a former intelligence operative. But Daniel recognized the practiced way Quinn scanned the room before sliding into the booth. "Your coffee's awful," Quinn remarked, waving off the waitress. "Tell me why I'm here at this ungodly hour." Daniel slid his phone across the table, showing the screenshot from the previous day's training session. Quinn studied it, his expression impassive. "Robert Carson," Daniel said quietly. "My wife's childhood friend, brother-in-law to Colonel Marcus Albright. His law firm handles cases for many officers on base." Quinn pulled out a small notebook. "The military connection makes it tricky. How far does this go?" "That's what I need you to find out," Daniel replied, leaning forward. "Everything, financial records, phone logs, travel history. Whatever it takes." "It'll be costly," Quinn warned. "And messy. Military communities are close-knit. One misstep could blow back on your career." "Money's not an issue," Daniel said, sliding over an envelope. "First installment. Just find the truth." Quinn pocketed the envelope without a glance. "Give me 2 weeks. And Daniel," he added, his tone firm, "don't do anything reckless. Act normal. These investigations require patience." The next 14 days tested Daniel's self-control. He maintained his routine, training exercises, meetings, and dinners with Lisa. He observed his wife with new awareness, noting how her phone was always face down, how her calls took place in the garden, and how her smile felt rehearsed. Charlotte came for Sunday dinner, her law school workload conveniently excusing her distraction. Daniel noticed her nervous energy, the constant phone checking, and her efforts to steer conversations away from Robert or his law firm. On day 15, Quinn called from a block number. "Coffee. Same place. 1 hour." This time, Quinn carried a thick folder. "You might need something stronger than coffee for this," he said, ordering breakfast to discourage interruptions. The evidence was damning. During Daniel's deployment 2 years prior, Lisa had been admitted to Ridgefield Hospital in Chicago under a false name. The attending physician, Dr. Emily Carter, had a history of managing private adoptions for affluent clients. "Here's where it gets interesting," Quinn said, laying out financial records. 3 days after the birth, a baby boy was adopted by Eleanor Harris in Tennessee. Eleanor is Robert's cousin and runs a prominent charitable foundation funded by military families. Daniel's grip tightened on his coffee cup. "The Military Family Support Initiative?" Quinn nodded, sliding over more documents. "It looks legitimate on the surface, but I traced the money, large sums funneling through accounts, eventually landing offshore. The Caymans specifically." "Show me." "Everything," Daniel demanded. For the next 2 hours, they meticulously analyzed the evidence. Bank records revealed regular payments to Lisa through shell companies. Travel logs placed her in Chicago monthly, aligning with foundation board meetings. Phone records showed hundreds of calls between Lisa, Robert, and Eleanor Harris. There's more, Quinn added reluctantly. Your stepdaughter's internship at Griffith International? Lorenzo Griffith sits on the foundation's board. The position was arranged by Robert personally. Daniel thought about Charlotte's sudden career rise, her upscale apartment, and her new car, all pieces of a puzzle he hadn't realized he was assembling. What's your recommendation? Daniel asked, his military training helping him focus on strategy rather than emotion. Quinn closed the folder deliberately. You need a team. This has outgrown a personal issue. We're looking at potential fraud, money laundering, and perhaps more. I've got a contact, Quinn continued. Maddie Solomon, a forensic accountant. She flagged suspicious activity in the foundation last year before being quietly dismissed. Set up the meeting, Daniel ordered. And keep digging. I want everyone involved identified. Driving home that evening, Daniel's mind raced. Robert wasn't just his wife's confidant. He was the mastermind behind a far-reaching scheme, leveraging the trust of military families to sustain his web of deceit. At home, Lisa was preparing dinner, humming softly. You're late, she said, kissing his cheek. Everything okay at the base? Just fine, Daniel replied, forcing a smile. How was your day? Oh, the usual. Book club, then lunch with the colonel's wife. She stirred the sauce. Robert might stop by later. He has some papers for you to sign for that investment we discussed. Daniel watched her lie effortlessly, wondering how many signs he had missed over the years. Actually, I've got an early morning. The papers can wait. If you're sure, Lisa replied, her phone buzzing. She glanced at it reflexively. Oh, Charlotte can't make it to dinner either. Big case at the firm. Of course, Daniel said, each word heavy with disbelief. She's been so busy lately. That night, lying beside his sleeping wife, Daniel made a decision. This was no longer just about his marriage. Somewhere in Tennessee, a 2-year-old boy carried his DNA, and a network of military families was being exploited. Picking up his burner phone, he texted Quinn, set up the meeting with Solomon. It's time to expand the operation. The meeting with Maddie Solomon took place in an underground parking lot in downtown Denver, a setting that would have felt melodramatic if not for the layers of deception Daniel had uncovered. The forensic accountant was a petite woman with steel gray hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Mr. Grant, she said, extending her hand. I've been expecting someone to ask questions about the foundation. They moved to her car, an unremarkable sedan with tinted windows. Quinn sat in the back, keeping an eye on the entrance. Show him, Quinn instructed. Maddie opened her laptop, revealing spreadsheets tracking years of financial movements. The foundation appears legitimate, she explained. They genuinely help military families, which makes it the perfect cover. But look here. She highlighted a series of transactions. Regular payments to 12 military spouses, including Lisa, disguised as charitable contributions. The amounts vary, but the pattern is consistent. Monthly deposits after foundation events or board meetings. Daniel studied the data, his military training helping him see the pattern. What do these spouses have in common? Access, Maddie said grimly. Their partners hold key roles, command positions, intelligence, procurement. The foundation isn't just moving money, it's buying influence. Quinn leaned forward. Tell him about the internship program. Maddie pulled up another file. The foundation runs a prestigious internship program, placing military family members in prominent firms. Your stepdaughter's role at Griffith International? She's one of 20 similar placements, all in companies with military contracts or connections. Lorenzo Griffith, Daniel muttered. Robert personally arranged Charlotte's internship. Maddie nodded. Griffith's firm handles millions in military-related contracts, and Robert's law firm oversees all the paperwork. It's a closed system. The foundation identifies families in vulnerable positions, provides support through charity or career opportunities, then uses those relationships to gain leverage. Daniel's mind raced. The baby, my son. Why involve Eleanor Harris? Leverage, Quinn interjected. A secret child adopted through questionable channels is insurance. Eleanor's foundation isn't just laundering money. It's a repository of secrets. Everyone involved has something to lose if it collapses. Maddie added, I found evidence of at least 3 other private adoptions arranged through the same network. All military families, all handled with extreme discretion, Daniel realized, and all that information flows through Robert's law firm. That's why they targeted your family, Quinn added. Your position as a special operations trainer, your connections at Fort Evers, you're valuable to them. Lisa's pregnancy wasn't just an accident. It was an opportunity. Daniel stood and began pacing the confined space of the parking garage. We need more. Bank records, adoption papers, everything you can find on Eleanor Harris's operation. Already working on it, Maddie assured him. But Daniel, be careful. When I started digging into the foundation's finances, I received a very generous severance package and a clear warning. These people protect their interests. They're exploiting military loyalty, Quinn observed. The code of silence, the brotherhood. They use it to their advantage. Daniel thought of his trainees, of the values he'd worked so hard to instill. Honor, integrity, sacrifice. This wasn't just a betrayal of him. It was a betrayal of everything the military community stood for. One more thing, Maddie added, pulling out a document. Charlotte isn't just covering for her mother. Look at her role in the foundation. The paper detailed Charlotte's responsibilities in client relations. She wasn't just an intern. She was actively gathering intelligence on wealthy military families, identifying potential targets for the foundation's operations. My stepdaughter, Daniel said quietly, is a recruiter for their scheme. She's good at it, Quinn added. Young, credible, from a military family herself. Her position at Griffith International gives her access to sensitive information about defense. Contracts. Daniel absorbed this final betrayal, his tactical mind already shifting from discovery to strategy. We need to proceed carefully, he decided. This isn't just about exposing a scandal. We're dealing with military families, careers, and lives at stake. I've seen operations like this before, Quinn said, leaning against his car. They start small, favors here, secrets there. Before you know it, everyone's compromised. The question is, where do we start unraveling it? Maddie closed her laptop decisively. Follow the money. The foundation's next fundraising event is in 3 weeks. All the major players will be there. Robert, Eleanor, the military spouses involved, including Lisa. She never misses a foundation event, Daniel said, his jaw tightening. It's not just the events, Maddie explained, pulling out another file. Every month, there are board meetings in Chicago. Lisa attends as a community liaison, but look at the expense reports. She pointed to several highlighted entries. Hotel stays, fine dining, all billed to the foundation. Daniel's fists clenched. Robert's arrangements? Like clockwork, Quinn confirmed. Same hotel, every time. The Astoria. Always booked under the foundation's name, 4 planning sessions. A text lit up Daniel's burner phone. It was from Lisa, working late with the foundation committee. Don't wait up. Love you. She's with him now, isn't she? Daniel asked, already knowing the answer. Quinn nodded grimly. They've been at the Metropolitan Club for the last hour. Foundation dinner. Officially. Daniel stared at his phone, years of military discipline keeping his voice calm. Show me everything on Charlotte's involvement. Every meeting, every document, every connection to Griffith International. Maddie spread papers across the car hood. She's clever, using her law school credentials to build trust. Here's a list of her recent targets, military families with high-level clearances or significant resources. The names made Daniel's blood run cold. He recognized many, officers he'd trained, families he'd welcomed into his home. She's been gathering intelligence and feeding it back to Robert's network, Quinn added. The foundation uses this information to customize their approach. They know which families are vulnerable, which have secrets worth exploiting. But why? Daniel demanded. Money laundering doesn't justify this level of organization. Maddie exchanged a glance with Quinn. We think the foundation is just the surface. These military connections, the classified information, they're worth far more than money. Someone's building a network of influence within the military community. Daniel thought of the sensitive training sessions he'd led, the classified information he'd handled. Had Lisa been mining him for intelligence all along? Had every intimate conversation been reported back to Robert? And his associates? I need surveillance on all of them, he decided. Lisa, Robert, Charlotte, everyone involved. Already in place, Quinn assured him. But, Daniel, you need to maintain your cover. Any change in behavior could alert them. I've spent my career training others in covert operations, Daniel said quietly. It's time I put those skills to use myself. As they packed up the evidence, Maddie handed him one final document. This arrived at my office yesterday. A financial transfer from the foundation to a newly established account in the Caymans. $5 million. Authorized by Robert and Eleanor. They're moving money, Quinn observed. Something big is coming. Daniel tucked the document into his jacket. Then we'd better be ready. Set up secure communications between us. From now on, we operate like any other covert mission, compartmentalized information, regular check-ins, contingency plans. As Daniel drove home that night, his military instincts fully took over. He wasn't just a betrayed husband anymore. He was an operator on a mission to expose a network that had embedded itself within the heart of the military community. Every dinner with Lisa, every conversation with Charlotte, every casual interaction within their social circle would become part of his counterintelligence effort. His phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. On my way home. Picked up your favorite wine. Love you. Daniel allowed himself a grim smile. Two could play this game of deception. He'd let them believe they still had him fooled while he gathered evidence and built his case. The foundation, Robert's law firm, Griffith International. The entire network was about to learn a hard lesson about underestimating a special operations trainer. Message received, he texted back. Can't wait to hear about your evening. In the darkness of his car, Daniel reviewed his mental checklist. Quinn would oversee surveillance. Maddie would trace the money. And Daniel would maintain his cover, playing the role of a trusting husband while working to uncover the truth. The coming weeks would test everything he had learned in his military career, and everything he thought he knew about loyalty, love, and betrayal. The late October rain drummed against the windows of Daniel's office at Fort Evers. 3 weeks had passed since his meeting with Maddie Solomon, and every day brought new revelations about the Foundation's reach. He stared at the latest surveillance photos from Quinn, Lisa entering the Astoria Hotel, Robert following 20 minutes later. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Captain Rivera, who had witnessed the initial revelations during the cybersecurity session, stood in the doorway. Sir, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Rivera's expression conveyed more than her words. She's waiting in the visitor's lot. Asked specifically not to come inside. Daniel instinctively checked his sidearm. Name? Yvette Sinclair. The name hit him like a physical blow. Robert's wife. Daniel had met her countless times at Foundation events. Watched her smile and charm while her husband wove his web of deceit. Thank you, Captain. I'll handle this. The visitor's lot was nearly empty except for a black Mercedes with tinted windows. As Daniel approached, the back door opened. Yvette stepped out, but she wasn't alone. Another woman exited the driver's seat. A tall, composed figure with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Daniel. Yvette's voice trembled slightly. This is Dina Hammond. She used to work for Robert's firm. We need to talk. Not here, Daniel replied, scanning the area. Follow me. He led them to a small diner. Off base, selecting a booth in the back corner. The waitress recognized him. He'd been coming here with Lisa for years. The thought now left a bitter taste in his mouth. I know what you've been investigating, Yvette began, her manicured fingers gripping a coffee cup. About the Foundation, about Robert and Lisa. Dina Hammond placed a thick manila envelope on the table. I was a paralegal at Sinclair and Associates for 6 years. Last spring, I discovered files that didn't add up. Client accounts with irregular payments, military family cases with suspicious settlements. They paid you off, Daniel said, not as a question, but a statement. Dina let out a hollow laugh. $500,000 and an ironclad NDA. I took it, moved to Savannah, and tried to forget. Then Yvette found me. Yvette pulled out her phone, her hands shaking. I wasn't supposed to be at the doctor's office that day. Robert thought I was in Chicago for a Foundation event. But I saw her, Daniel. Lisa. She's pregnant again. The words lingered like smoke in the air. Daniel's military training kept his face neutral even as his mind raced through possibilities. For months, Yvette continued, Robert's been in Colorado with me 5 months ago. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. Dina opened the envelope and spread out documents across the table. These are copies of what I found. Robert's been using military family cases to gather intelligence, personal information, financial records, security clearance details. Anything that could hold value. The foundation is just a front, Yvette said, her voice low but steady. They target vulnerable families, offer help through Robert's firm, then use that information for leverage. The charitable donations? They're payments for silence. Daniel studied the documents, his tactical mind cataloging every detail. Why come forward now? Yvette's polished facade cracked, revealing the strain beneath. Because I'm done being part of it. Last week, I overheard Robert on the phone with Lorenzo Griffith. They're planning something big, Daniel. Something that could hurt a lot of families. And I can't live with what I know anymore, Dina added. That NDA doesn't mean much when there's federal fraud involved. A text buzzed on Daniel's phone. Quinn's regular check-in. He ignored it, keeping his focus on the women across from him. Coming here was risky, he said quietly. For both of you. We're careful, Dina assured him. I still have friends at the firm. They let me know when documents are being accessed, when questions are being asked. Robert doesn't know we're here. Yvette reached across the table, her fingers brushing Daniel's arm. There's something else you should know. About Charlotte. Daniel tensed. His stepdaughter had been distant lately, blaming her increased workload at Griffith International. She's not just an intern, Yvette explained. Robert has been grooming her for years. The law school recommendations, the prestigious internship, it was all part of the plan. She has access to military families through you and connections through the foundation. She's a perfect asset, Dina added. Young, smart, from a respected military family. Who would suspect her? The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too harsh, the booth too cramped. Daniel thought back to all the times Charlotte had asked about his colleagues, her curiosity about his work. Had every conversation been part of their scheme? I need proof, he said finally. Everything you have on Robert's operation, the firm's involvement. Dina patted the envelope. It's all here, bank records, client files, foundation transactions. Her eyes met his. Be careful how you use it. This won't just ruin careers, it will destroy lives. Yvette glanced at her watch. We should go. Robert has a board meeting tonight, but he notices if I'm gone too long. As they stood to leave, Yvette pressed a key into Daniel's hand. Lake House, Old Willow Road. We can meet there safely. No cameras, no phones, no connections to Robert or the foundation. Daniel watched them drive away, the manila envelope heavy in his jacket. The rain had stopped, but the air carried a charged tension, like the moment before a storm breaks. His phone buzzed again, Quinn, then Maddie. They need to know about this, but first he had to process what he'd just learned. His wife, pregnant with another man's child. His stepdaughter, an active participant in their deception. And now, two unlikely allies offering a chance to bring it all down. He drove back to the base slowly, his mind already formulating plans. This wasn't just about his family anymore. With evidence of federal fraud and the exploitation of military families, he could build a case to expose the entire network. In his office, Daniel secured the documents in his safe and made 3 calls. The first was to Quinn. Surveillance on the lake house needed to be in place. The second was to Maddie. She'd want to analyze the new financial records. The third was to Captain Rivera. Sarah, he said when she answered. Remember that cybersecurity training where this all started? I need your help with something. The lake house on Old Willow Road became their base of operations. Daniel sat at a weathered oak table, surrounded by his hastily assembled team. Quinn leaned against the fireplace, his usual pressed shirt replaced by tactical gear. Maddie had taken over one wall, plastering it with diagrams and transaction logs. The Foundation's network is bigger than we thought, Maddie explained, pointing to a flowchart. Every major military base in the Southeast has ties. They're not just gathering intelligence. They're building influence. We need more than just financial records, Quinn interjected. If we're taking this down, we need irrefutable evidence of criminal activity. Daniel nodded toward the newest member of their team, Ignacio Russell, a military prosecutor known for his relentless pursuit of corruption. Ignacio scanned the evidence spread across the table, his sharp eyes narrowing as he pieced the puzzle together. If we're going to win this, Ignacio said, we need to hit them where it hurts, and fast. Financial fraud, exploitation of military families, and potential national security breaches. This is far beyond a local case, Ignacio Russell stated firmly. Dana Harper, the cybersecurity expert brought in by Captain Rivera, nodded. The digital trail is extensive, she said. They're using encrypted channels, but they're getting sloppy. They think no one's watching. Clifford Bird, a former JAG officer with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, picked up one of Dana's documents. These client files alone demonstrate a pattern of malpractice. But the military connection makes this federal. They're not just exploiting families. They're potentially compromising operational security. Daniel stood, gazing out the window as the afternoon sunlight reflected off the peaceful lake, a sharp contrast to the storm brewing in his mind. Walk me through what we know, he ordered. Maddie Solomon took the lead, her meticulous approach evident. The Foundation identifies vulnerable military families through Robert's law firm. They offer legal help, financial aid, or career opportunities. Once families are indebted, the real operation begins. Information gathering. They collect everything, Quinn added. Personal secrets, financial details, base operations, deployment schedules, anything that could be valuable or used as leverage. Ignacio continued. These files reveal at least a dozen cases where they've used compromising information to manipulate families. Dana pulled up a screen. Their digital footprint is fascinating. They blend legitimate communications with encrypted messages. What looks like routine updates on charitable contributions are actually coded reports on data collection. Daniel's voice was low but firm. And Charlotte? The name still stung. Clifford nodded. She's their star recruiter. Young, connected, and seemingly above suspicion. Her position at Griffith International grants her access to sensitive defense contract information, and her military family background opens doors at bases. Daniel processed this, his mind already forming a plan. We need coordination. Dana, keep monitoring their communications. Maddie, track the money. Ignacio, start building the legal case. What about surveillance? Quinn asked. They're getting suspicious. Lisa's been asking about your late nights at the office. Let her, Daniel replied. In fact, let's give them something to see. Dana, can you create a digital trail? Make it appear as though I'm working on a classified project. Dana smiled. Already ahead of you. I've been leaving breadcrumbs, late-night server access, encrypted communications with non-existent contacts. They'll see exactly what we want them to. Be careful, Clifford warned. They're well connected. One misstep could alert them. That's why we need leverage, Ignacio said. Something significant, enough to make them reckless. Daniel nodded. The Foundation's fundraiser next month will be key. Robert, Eleanor, Lorenzo Griffith, even Lisa is on the planning committee. A perfect opportunity, Quinn agreed. But we need more than evidence. We need them to incriminate themselves. They're already doing that, Dana reported, turning her screen toward the group. Look at these communications between Robert and Griffith. They're planning something big, moving money, preparing documents. They think they're untouchable. That's their weakness, Maddie observed. Their confidence and connections are making them careless. Daniel studied recent surveillance photos. Lisa entering Robert's office, Charlotte meeting with Lorenzo Griffith, Eleanor making late-night visits to the Foundation's headquarters. Here's the plan, he decided. We let them believe I'm developing something classified and highly valuable. Dana, craft a digital trail suggesting a new training program that could provide access to every special operations unit nationwide. Done, Dana said confidently. They'll want that information badly enough to take risks. Meanwhile, Maddie added, I'll keep tracking their financial moves. They're preparing for something major, and we need to know what. Daniel moved to the evidence wall, studying the intricate web of relationships and transactions. Quinn, I need surveillance on all their movements, every meeting, every call. Already in place, Quinn assured him. They're not as careful as they think. Clifford, prepare the legal framework. When this breaks, I want everything ready for federal prosecution. The former JAG officer nodded. I'll coordinate discreetly with Justice Department contacts. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Daniel remained by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Somewhere in Chicago, Lisa was likely with Robert, plotting their next move. Charlotte was using her position to gather intelligence on military families. And here he was preparing to dismantle the entire network. One last thing he called out: everything discussed stays in this room. No phones, no computers, no outside contact. We operate like a covert mission, compartmentalized information, need-to-know basis. The team nodded, understanding the stakes. This wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was about protecting military families who had been exploited, manipulated, and betrayed. As night fell, Daniel reviewed their progress. The groundwork was set: financial tracking, digital surveillance, legal preparation. Now, they needed the perfect moment to expose the entire operation. His phone buzzed, a message from Lisa. Foundation fundraiser planning meeting tomorrow. Don't wait up. Daniel allowed himself a grim smile. They thought they were in control, watching, manipulating. They had no idea they were the ones being hunted. The Foundation's annual fundraiser transformed the Denver Civic Center into a dazzling display of military philanthropy. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in warm light, casting a glow over tables adorned with navy and gold. Uniformed officers mingled with affluent donors in an atmosphere of camaraderie and prestige. Daniel adjusted his tie, scanning the room as the players took their positions. Lisa glided through the crowd in an elegant silver gown, radiating the image of a devoted military spouse and Foundation board member. Robert Sinclair moved with practiced charm, his tailored tuxedo and polished demeanor a testament to his law firm's success. Eleanor Harris commanded attention near the stage, accepting accolades for her charitable efforts, while Lorenzo Griffith nodded in agreement by her side. Everything in place? Daniel murmured into his champagne glass. Dana's voice came through his discreet earpiece. Digital Trail is active. They've been accessing your classified files all week. Robert and Griffith had 3 late-night meetings about it. Foundation accounts are moving. Maddie added from her station in a nearby surveillance hub. Large transfers coming in from Cayman accounts. They're consolidating. Daniel moved through the room effortlessly, playing his role to perfection. For weeks, he'd been planting the idea of a groundbreaking new training program, bait that offered direct access to special operations methodologies, protocols, and personnel data. Incoming, Quinn's voice warned. Lisa, 2 o'clock. Lisa appeared at his side, her perfume familiar and calculated. Darling, you've been so busy lately. The Foundation board was just saying how much they appreciate your dedication to the military community. Daniel smiled, masking the calculation behind his words. Just doing my part. In fact, I have an announcement to make later. He felt her curiosity spark. Oh, you didn't mention anything. Been keeping it under wraps? Something special for the Foundation. He noticed her glance toward Robert, who was pretending not to eavesdrop. The trap was set. Cassandra's here, Quinn reported. Meeting with Griffith near the bar. Daniel turned slightly, spotting Charlotte in an elegant black dress, leaning in close to Lorenzo Griffith. Once, he would have seen a rising young lawyer networking. Now he recognized the art of intelligence gathering. They're moving, Dana reported. Increased activity on their secure channels. They're discussing your project. The evening unfolded seamlessly. Daniel maneuvered through the crowd, dropping subtle hints about his classified project. He observed Robert and Griffith exchanging significant looks, Eleanor making discreet phone calls, and Lisa's heightened attention to his every word. Financial alerts coming in, Maddie announced. Emergency funds being accessed. Big movements from the Cayman accounts. Legal team is ready, Clifford added from the mobile command center. As dinner concluded, Daniel approached the stage. The trap was fully set, every piece meticulously in place. He took the microphone, scanning the room filled with military families, some innocent, others complicit, all about to witness the unmasking of a complex criminal enterprise. Distinguished guests, he began, I have an announcement to make. The foundation has done incredible work supporting our military community. That's why I've decided to make a significant contribution. The room fell silent, attention laser-focused. He noticed Robert and Eleanor exchanging wary glances, Lisa's bright smile betraying the nervous drumming of her fingers on the tablecloth. After reviewing the foundation's outstanding work, Daniel continued, I've decided to contribute something far more valuable than funds: access to our new special operations training protocols. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lorenzo Griffith leaned forward in his chair, his usual composure slipping just enough to reveal his intense interest. The program I've been developing, Daniel began, activating the presentation screen behind him, represents years of military expertise, training methodologies, personnel assessments, operational guidelines. Everything the Foundation would need to expand its support for military families. He clicked through slides filled with carefully crafted information. Just enough truth to seem credible. Just enough classified markers to make it irresistible. Through his earpiece, he heard Dana's satisfied whisper. They're accessing the digital files now. Multiple attempts to breach the secure sections. Robert Sinclair stood, raising his glass. A remarkable gesture, Daniel. The Foundation would be honored to. I'm not finished. Daniel cut him off, his voice sharp enough to silence the room. Before we proceed, he continued, we need to discuss exactly how the Foundation uses its resources. The offshore accounts, the surveillance operations, the exploitation of military families. The room fell deadly silent. Eleanor Harris's face turned pale. Lisa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. I know everything, Daniel said, his voice steady but piercing. The baby born 2 years ago at Ridgefield Hospital. The payments to military spouses for intelligence gathering. The manipulation of legal cases through Sinclair and Associates. Robert took a step forward, but froze as the ballroom. Doors opened. An elegant woman in an evening gown entered. A familiar face from Foundation events, posing as a wealthy military widow. Federal Agent Elvira Harrison, she announced, flashing her badge under the glittering chandeliers. I believe we have some matters to discuss. Chaos erupted in the room. Eleanor Harris's phone clattered to the floor as she frantically attempted to delete files. Lorenzo Griffith moved toward the side exit, only to find Quinn waiting for him. Charlotte, her face ashen, gripped the edge of her table. The Foundation's accounts are frozen. Maddie's voice came through Daniel's earpiece. They're trying to access the Cayman transfers, but it's all locked down. Lisa stood slowly, her silver dress catching the light. You don't understand, she whispered. We were helping people. The Foundation was stealing from the people who trusted you, Daniel replied coldly. Using their secrets, their vulnerabilities, their faith in the military community. Agent Harrison's team moved efficiently through the crowd, securing key players. Robert Sinclair's confident facade crumbled as he was read his rights. Eleanor Harris sobbed about the children we helped, while Lorenzo Griffith angrily demanded his lawyer. Daniel observed it all from the stage, his military training keeping his emotions in check. Through his earpiece, he heard his team coordinating with federal agents, securing evidence, ensuring nothing could be deleted or destroyed. Charlotte approached the stage, tears streaming down her face. Dad, she began, using the name she hadn't called him in months. I didn't know at first. We'll talk later, Daniel said quietly. Right now, you need to cooperate with Agent Harrison. The elaborate trap had sprung perfectly. Every player was cornered, every piece of evidence secured, every escape route blocked. As federal agents escorted Robert and Lisa to separate vehicles, Daniel felt no triumph. Only a deep sadness for the trust that had been broken, the lives manipulated, and the bonds betrayed. Agent Harrison appeared at his side. Clean operation, she remarked professionally. Your team's intel was impeccable. We've got enough evidence to dismantle this network entirely. Daniel nodded, watching the last of the stunned guests being interviewed by agents. The chandeliers still sparkled. The table still gleamed with expensive china. But the facade of charitable giving lay shattered beyond repair. Your wife, Harrison said carefully, is requesting to speak with you. Not tonight, Daniel replied firmly. Tonight, we focus on securing everything they tried to hide. The real work is just beginning. Through his earpiece, he listened as his team continued their tasks, ensuring no detail was overlooked. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, the tide had turned. Dana was tracking digital footprints. Maddie was following money trails. Quinn was securing physical evidence. The trap hadn't just exposed the corruption. It had captured every detail, every connection, every betrayal. The elaborate operation was complete, but Daniel knew this was only the beginning of a much longer process. As he looked out over the chaos of the raided fundraiser, he thought of all the military families who had been exploited, the trust that had been abused, and the damage that would take years to repair. The cool night air brushed against him as he finally stepped outside, watching federal agents load the last of the evidence into secure vehicles. His team's voices coordinated through his earpiece, but for a moment, he let himself feel the full weight of their accomplishment and what it had cost. The morning after the Foundation raid dawned cold and gray over Fort Evers. Television trucks lined the base entrance, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like metallic flowers. Inside his office, Daniel watched CNN replay clips of Robert Sinclair and Eleanor Harris being escorted from the fundraiser in handcuffs. Military charity scandal rocks Fort Evers scrolled across the screen. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages. Colonel Marcus Albright had already called 3 times, his voicemails growing increasingly frantic as the depth of his brother-in-law's corruption came to light. A knock at the door revealed Captain Sarah Rivera, her usual crisp professionalism softened by concern. "Sir, the FBI's forensic team needs access to the Foundation's office on base." "Give them whatever they need," Daniel replied, his voice hoarse from a sleepless night. "And Sarah, thank you for everything." She nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. Her quick thinking during that cybersecurity training had sparked this entire investigation. "The military community's in shock," she said softly. "Nobody saw this coming." "Almost nobody," she added with a faint smile. Daniel's computer chimed with a new email. An urgent message from the base commander requesting his presence at an emergency briefing. As he gathered his materials, his office phone lit up again. Lisa's lawyer this time. Military police escorted him past a sea of reporters as he made his way to headquarters. Inside, the usually bustling corridors were eerily silent, officers and enlisted personnel speaking in hushed tones. The briefing room was packed with senior staff when Daniel entered. Colonel Matthews, the base commander, stood at the podium, his expression grave. "The FBI has confirmed our worst fears," Matthews began without preamble. "The Foundation wasn't just laundering money. They were collecting classified information. Every military family they helped was carefully chosen for their access to sensitive data." Agent Elvira Harrison stepped forward, her federal badge catching the fluorescent light. "We've seized the Foundation servers. The scope of their intelligence gathering is staggering. They had files on deployment schedules, base security protocols, personnel assignments, anything that could be exploited by interested parties." "How do we miss this?" Major Thompson demanded from the back row. "They operated right under our noses." "Because they used our own values against us," Daniel answered, standing. "Trust, loyalty, taking care of our own. They exploited everything that makes our military community strong." Harrison nodded. "Mr. Grant is right. Robert Sinclair's law firm was the perfect cover. Military families trusted him with their legal issues, their personal struggles. Every detail was cataloged and stored." The briefing continued as Harrison outlined the investigation's findings in meticulous detail. Daniel sat silently, absorbing the full extent of what had been uncovered. This was no longer just a matter of betrayal. It was a breach that had shaken the foundation of their military community. Lorenzo Griffith's firm had been raided at dawn, its computers seized and contracts frozen pending federal investigation. Eleanor Harris's Foundation offices in 3 states were simultaneously searched. "And Lisa Grant?" Colonel Matthews asked, glancing at Daniel. "In federal custody," Harrison replied. "She's claiming limited knowledge of the operation, but our evidence says otherwise." Dr. Emily Carter has agreed to cooperate, providing detailed records of the secret birth and subsequent adoption. Daniel felt the weight of the room shift to him. These were his colleagues, his military family. Some had attended his wedding to Lisa, watched Charlotte grow up, even contributed to the foundation's supposed charitable efforts. There's more, Harrison continued. We've identified at least 15 other military spouses who received regular payments through the foundation. Each had access to sensitive information through their spouse's position. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Daniel recognized names on the list. People he'd trusted, families he'd supported, colleagues he'd referred to Robert Sinclair's firm. The foundation's financial records are a labyrinth. Harrison explained, displaying intricate transaction charts. They used legitimate charitable work to mask their real operations. Every genuine act of assistance came with strings attached: information gathering, surveillance, compromise. Colonel Matthews cleared his throat. And Charlotte Grant? Her position at Griffith International? She's cooperating, Daniel said quietly. She's providing details about how they identified and targeted vulnerable families. The briefing continued for another 2 hours, mapping out the scandal's immediate implications. Security protocols would need to be revised, clearances re-evaluated, and affected families notified. Trust within the military community had been shattered, and rebuilding it would take years. As the room cleared, Harrison stopped Daniel. There's something else you should know. The FBI's forensic accountants found something in Eleanor's private records. It's about the child, your son. Daniel's jaw tightened. What about him? He has a rare medical condition. Eleanor has been using foundation funds to cover his specialized treatments. That's part of why she agreed to the adoption. They needed someone with access to significant resources. The revelation hit Daniel like a physical blow. Somewhere in Tennessee, a 2-year-old boy with his DNA was battling an illness he hadn't known about. The treatments, Harrison added gently, are expensive. With the foundation's assets frozen, I'll handle it, Daniel interrupted. Quietly. The child shouldn't suffer for their crimes. Later that afternoon, Daniel sat in his office, staring at framed photos he'd removed from his desk. His wedding day, family picnics by the lake, Charlotte's law school graduation. Each memory was now tainted with questions of what had been real and what had been part of an elaborate deception. His secure phone buzzed, a message from Maddie Solomon. More financial records had surfaced, revealing years of systematic exploitation. The Foundation's legitimate charitable works had been carefully crafted as a facade for their intelligence-gathering operations. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Emily Carter stood hesitantly, clutching her medical bag like a shield. I brought the records, she said without preamble. Everything about the birth, the adoption. You deserve to know the truth. Daniel gestured to a chair, bracing himself as yet another layer of betrayal was about to be unraveled. Outside his window, the base continued its routines, but Daniel knew that nothing would ever feel the same. The collapse of the Foundation had exposed more than just a criminal enterprise. It had laid bare the fragile nature of trust itself. The private medical facility outside Nashville shone in the autumn sunlight, its sleek, modern design contrasting with the rolling Tennessee hills. Daniel sat in his rental car. The medical records Dr. Carter had provided spread across the passenger seat. Pages of test results, treatment plans, and progress notes detailed a little boy's battle with a rare genetic disorder. Eleanor Harris's assistant, Robbie Duncan, had reached out through federal channels after learning about Daniel's anonymous arrangement to continue the child's care. Now, sitting in the hospital parking lot, Daniel grappled with the weight of decisions made by others that had shaped so many lives. His phone buzzed. Agent Harrison providing an update. The FBI's forensic team had uncovered that Eleanor's foundation had funneled over $2 million to this facility in the past 2 years, carefully disguised as general charitable medical support. A light tap on his window startled him. Robbie Duncan stood there, his thin face lined with worry. Daniel hadn't expected him to come in person. Mr. Grant, Robbie said as Daniel stepped out of the car. Thank you for coming. And for making sure the treatments could continue. They walked toward the building, Robbie filling the silence with nervous chatter. He's doing well, all things considered. The doctors are optimistic about the new protocol. Eleanor made sure he had the best care, whatever else she did wrong. The pediatric wing was bright with colorful murals and soothing music. Through an observation window, Daniel saw a small boy with his mother's golden hair and his own determined jaw, concentrating on a puzzle while a nurse adjusted his fore. "That's Matthew," Robbie said softly. Eleanor registered him as Matthew Harris. She made sure he would never know about the circumstances of his birth. Thought she was protecting him, I guess. Daniel watched his son, a child he had never held, never known existed until the investigation, methodically sorting puzzle pieces. "Tell me about his condition." Robbie pulled out a thick file. "It's called Hurler syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that affects multiple organs. Without treatment," he swallowed hard. "Eleanor found out during the adoption process. That's when she started diverting foundation money for his care." "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer. "Because Eleanor isn't a monster," Robbie replied. "She did terrible things, helped Robert and the others exploit people's trust. But everything she did, every dollar she took, every secret she kept, it was all for him, to make sure he got the treatments he needed." Daniel thought of the tangled web of deception they had uncovered. She could have asked for help, legitimate help. "Pride," Robbie said simply, "and fear. Once you start down that path of secrets and lies, she thought she could handle it. By the time she realized how deep she was in Robert's operation, it was too late." A doctor approached the observation window, making notes on Matthew's chart. The boy looked up, his bright smile hitting Daniel like a physical blow. It was Lisa's smile, the real one he had fallen in love with before the lies began. "The new treatment protocol is promising," Robbie continued, "but expensive. When the Foundation's assets were frozen, Eleanor was terrified the treatments would stop. That's why I reached out. She doesn't know I'm here. The trust is already set up," Daniel assured him. "Anonymous, ironclad. The medical bills will be covered." Robbie's shoulders sagged with relief. "You're a better person than any of us deserve, Mr. Grant. After everything they did to you." "He's an innocent child," Daniel said, cutting him off. "Whatever else happened, whatever crimes were committed, he shouldn't suffer for it." They watched Matthew work on his puzzle for a few more minutes. A nurse brought him medication, her gentle efficiency catching Daniel's eye. She cared for Matthew as a child to be protected, not as a secret to be hidden. "There's something else," Robbie said hesitantly. "After I saw what you did, setting up the trust, I have information about the Foundation's activities. Things Eleanor told me. Records she kept separate from the main files." Daniel studied Robbie's face. "Why come forward now?" "Because you showed mercy when you had every right to be vengeful. The FBI has most of it, but there are details only I know. How they chose their targets, how they used the information. I want to make it right." As they walked back to the parking lot, Daniel's phone buzzed again. Agent Harrison was updating him on new evidence, more arrests, and the widening investigation. But his mind was still in that hospital room, watching a little boy with his jaw and Lisa's smile fight a battle he hadn't known about. "Mr. Duncan," he said as they reached his car, "thank you for telling me about him. And for coming forward." Robbie nodded, understanding the layers beneath the simple words. "He's a fighter, you know. The doctors say he's getting stronger every day." Daniel drove back to his hotel in silence, the weight of the day settling heavily around him. His son would grow up never knowing him, and perhaps that was for the best. But he would have the care he needed, the chance to fight his battles with all the resources Daniel could provide. That evening, Daniel sat in his hotel room, updating his team. Maddie Solomon was already tracing the financial information Robbie had provided, while Quinn coordinated with FBI surveillance teams.